Jersey home was illegally searched and is asking a New York judge to toss out most of the evidence. The veteran Democrat says federal agents ransacked his home last year out of revenge because he'd beaten a prior prosecution. Menendez is accused of accepting gifts in exchange for political favors. State Senator Cleo Fields is running for U.S. Congress in Louisiana's second black majority congressional district. The state legislature created the new district during a special session last week. The new district covers parts of East and West Baton Rouge parishes, Point Coupee Parish, and several other parishes across central Louisiana. Senator Fields serves the 14th Senate District. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers pulled away late in the fourth quarter last night to beat the Lakers by 11. A sore left ankle kept LeBron on the bench in street clothes. Kawhi Leonard had a triple-double with 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists, 23 points and 10 assists for James Harden. At 28-14, the Clippers are now 1.5 games behind Minnesota and Oklahoma City for the best record in the Western Conference. Chris Paul of the Golden State Warriors and Malcolm Brogdon of the Portland Trail Blazers are major investors in Ava DuVernay's new film, Origin. The movie premiered Friday at theaters nationwide. Top 5 women's college basketball teams in this week's rankings: South Carolina, Kansas State, Colorado, UCLA, and Iowa. On the men's side, UConn, Purdue, North Carolina, Houston, and Tennessee. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things. Increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice.
We want cleaner air.
Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough. 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 If we care
enough. It's all love. It's all love. All love. No dairy, no sweets, only ripe vegetables, fresh fruit and whole wheat. I'm from the old school, my household smell like soul food, bruh. Curry falafel, barbecue tofu, no fish though, no candy bars, no cigarettes, only ganja, fresh squeezed juice from oranges. Exercising daily to stay healthy, and I rarely drink water out the tap cause it's filthy.
Lentil soup is mental fruit and ginger root is good for the youth.
I'm Tavis Smiley, and we are thrilled to have you tune into our program today, particularly and especially in this hour where we will feature 2 conversations, both about health. On the backside of this hour, our resident physician, Dr. Robert Drummond, on prostate cancer in black men in light of Dexter Scott King's untimely passing. He was only 62, the youngest son of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, passed away Monday here in Southern California at his Malibu home. And so we'll talk about black men and prostate cancer. Dexter, way too young to be dead at 62. We'll talk about that on the backside of this hour. We commenced this hour, though, with a dear friend of ours. I've had the honor of talking to her many times over the years, in part because she was a physician that was consulted by my dear friend Cheryl Flowers, who's been gone now for over 10 years. Cheryl was a brilliant black woman who was my longtime producer of this radio program for many years, and has been gone now for over a decade, but lost her battle with triple-negative breast cancer at the age of 42. If you're ever in Los Angeles visiting and you come to our studios, you'll see on the front of our building and on the back of our building a plaque that we placed on our building dedicating these studios to one Cheryl Flowers. So either the front or the back entrance, you'll see a beautiful plaque with Cheryl's image and name and other detail on the walls of this building. So I met Dr. Olipade many years ago when Cheryl was trying to navigate her bout with triple negative, and it sadly took her out. But much progress has been made since that time on triple negative, and Dr. Olipade has been at the epicenter of that. But today she's on to help us decipher the genetic code of breast cancer for vulnerable populations, principally black women. Dr. Olipade, good to hear your voice again. How are you today?
Oh, it's wonderful to talk to you, and I can't believe it's almost 10 years since we lost Cheryl. Yeah. Thank you for all you do to give information and to empower everyone in the community to take charge of their health. Thank you. I can't thank you enough for continuing to honor her memory.
Nope, it is I who should thank you, and I will right now, because you've been at the epicenter of all of this. You are the person that sisters literally all across the country are trying to track down. And I know this not just from Cheryl's case, but from other people who I've recommended Dr. Olipade. And let me just say this. It means something when you have access to black experts. And I don't care what the field of human endeavor is, but it means something when there's a black woman named Dr. Olipade who you can refer other women to when they themselves or family members are facing breast cancer or triple-negative breast cancer. And I must say that over the years, as I've told the story, and people know the story about Cheryl, and my relationship with her over the years in this radio business, they've come to me and asked me for advice, and can you connect me to that doctor whose name they can't pronounce, Olipade, and that's her last name. You really can't pronounce her first name, but they've asked me, can you connect me to Dr. Olipade, and I've done that. And every time I've sent someone her way across this country, she's always responded generously and charitably and quickly. And so I want to just thank you for the work you're doing, but for also responding to all the people that I've personally sent to you. And that says nothing of your practice and all the people that you see all the time. That said, let me just jump right in with this broad question first, and then we'll talk about the genetic code. I intimated a moment ago that triple negative is not now the death sentence that it was, sadly, for Cheryl over a decade ago. Am I accurate in that assessment?
Oh, you are absolutely correct. And the reason why I really love talking to you this time of the year is that, we have made so much progress. And while I was waiting to get on, I was really enjoying the idea around climate justice. As you know, I live on the south side of Chicago. And anyone who has come to Chicago will know about the rivalry between the south side and the west side. Because, we all know where we live. We know our communities. We know the food we eat. We know how we live our lives. And black people should be celebrated for having the resilience to not only survive, but thrive in America, where we are so divided. Mm-hmm. And having said that, I have always wanted to study genetics because everyone was born by a woman or, came through this world through a woman. Mm-hmm. So I always really want to give due respect to all the black women who came before me and to know that we can't do this work alone. So, working on the south side of Chicago and having my community support my research, having the community ask the questions when we go to them, and we ask them, can we do genetics research? And they said, we want to be treated like everybody else. Whatever you're doing at the University of Chicago, we're going to support you, and we're going to do that work. That's how I got into genetics, and that's how we started talking about BRCA1 and BRCA2. And you know what? I'm asking everyone, you know your family history, you know who has had breast cancer, and I'm sorry that we lost another young man to prostate cancer.
Yes.
We have lost young black men to colorectal cancer, and we don't know why, right? So anytime we are faced with someone we care about who is a celebrity dying of cancer, let us bring it back home and ask, how about people in our own community? And so when I started asking people in the community, what do you know about genetics? What do you know about breast cancer? You know, they told me, we have never seen anyone survive.
Hold that thought 1 second, Dr. Olapati. I want to come back to that point in a second here. I am fascinated by what you're about to tell me about black people and genetics. And I raise that because I know that black people are oftentimes scared of medicine because of the history of the way we've been maltreated in this country. So when you go to black people and say you want to research them and their families and their bodies for genetic research, I can't imagine that a lot of folks didn't get scared about that. I want to hear the story. When we come forward, you're listening to Dr. Olapati on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
When you're young, life is full of choices. Don't let opioids like highly addictive and deadly fentanyl take away your life with just one wrong pill. Addiction is a disease that can affect anyone at any age. But there is a choice to get help for this disease. Find medically proven treatment options, including virtual, at choosemat.org.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the exclusive media sponsor of This Light of Ours, activist photographers of the Civil Rights Movement. A dynamic new exhibition on view now at the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles. This Light of Ours showcases more than 150 photos taken by movement insiders from diverse backgrounds that reveal the vital work undertaken by a broad coalition of organizers and everyday people whose collective action changed America. This Light of Ours is one of 3 temporary exhibitions currently on view at the Skirball, which together explore issues related to civil rights, immigration, and pluralism. Tickets and more information for all 3 exhibitions are available at skirball.org. That's skirball.org. SKIRBALL.org.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
More of Dr. Funmi Olapati coming your way right now. Dr. Olapati, when you go to a bunch of black folk on the south side of Chicago, or for that matter elsewhere, and you tell them you want to do research about them, you want to do genetic research on them, how do they respond?
Well, so of course it's like we're ain't into that yet, is what I heard.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, you know, to do that, you have to gain the trust of the community. And because I am from the community and I know exactly why they should not participate in my research, I had to go through people who are embedded in the community, people who look like them, and I would say, look, I'm at the University of Chicago. We're studying cures for tomorrow, for your cancer of today. And I have this beautiful family that came from Northwest Indiana, and they know their family history. They brought their family history to me, and they said, we are from the South. We have generations, 5 generations of our family who have had breast cancer. Help us out here. And so by doing that, I learned how to communicate, how to say we're all in this together. And that's how we were able to do it. And that's why I'm really about genetic justice. It's more than black and white. It's about all of us being included. And so we're now at the point where we're saying you have to include us. Otherwise, don't sell medications to us. And I'm really pleased that that movement is going on now, where we are all sitting at the table. We are developing the protocols together, and the community trusts that we're not going to use these genetics to discriminate. But we can't relent on being included in studies. And I'm so thrilled that you are talking to communities across this country, because if we remain afraid of participating in genetics research, if we stay away from fighting for climate justice, then we're the ones who are going to suffer the worst consequences of it. So that's why I want us to be at the forefront. And I came to Chicago 40 years ago, and I promised myself I'm not going to leave until I get this movement to be national and to be global.
Well, you're working hard at it, and I'm always honored to have you on this program. I love the way you just brilliantly, as only you can do, linked climate justice with genetic justice. I just love the linkage that you made between those two things. Give me a sense, and give the audience a sense of what specifically you are doing when it comes to your genetic research, this deciphering of the genetic code as it relates to breast cancer. Take me inside your lab. What are you doing exactly?
Yeah, so I have this beautiful space that actually overlooks the skyline in Chicago, and I'm there. It's a foggy day and gloomy day in Chicago, but I'm on the 8th floor, and I'm so happy to be in Chicago because to my right is the lake, and to my left is one of the most deprived communities in Chicago, in Woodlawn. And when people talk about Chicago, they talk about the crime, but I talk about my neighbors, people who get up every morning, have a way to go to work even when it is cold, and then they get sick and they come to me. And when I tell them to participate in research because we are in the neighborhood, they say, well, Doc, I trust you. And I tell them, I've been here 40 years. I know where you're coming from. And so some of our patients, we have to get them food to be able to get them through chemotherapy. That could be life-saving for them. So over time, we have learned that it's not just about the genetics alone. It's about even your environment, whether you're stressed out all the time. So yes, we did the work. We were the ones to bring out BRCA1, BRCA2. When you talk about BRCA1, everybody thinks about Angelina Jolie. But the only people I can think of are my patients, my Black, young, beautiful people like Cheryl Flowers who died prematurely. And that's why we started really saying it's not just the genetics. You know, she didn't have a genetic mutation, but what was it that made her develop triple-negative breast cancer? And as of today, we have not found that solution. And that's why we all need to work towards doing more and more research. So yes, I sequence whole genomes. I sequence genomes of patients who are African Americans. I sequence genomes of people who just say I'm Black and proud. And then I do my work across the Caribbean, and I collaborate with everybody because we have to be part of the solution. And guess what? Everyone comes to me and says, we don't have enough. They won't participate. And I was like, well, why don't you hire people who look like me to be the head of your research team?
Yes.
Maybe they will participate. So that's a movement where every comprehensive cancer center now is talking about, don't just go to the community to take their samples. Engage the community. Help them develop jobs. University of Chicago is the highest employer on the south side of Chicago, and we have a diverse workforce. We first have to make sure that they are safe at home, that they have food to eat, and then they can participate. And we just want people to trust us.
You mentioned earlier that my friend Cheryl Flowers did not have a genetic mutation, which leads me to ask, are there ways, this is your lane, you're the expert, not me, but are there ways for black folk in particular to find out anything about their genetics in advance of whatever they may be susceptible to?
Yes. So the good news in terms of really using genetics to develop the treatment for you is that the triple negative breast cancer that Cheryl had, we started using immunotherapy. And one of my colleagues, actually, Dr. Nanda, who was working under me at the time, was one of the first to take this as a biomarker to go and do a national study where we gave everybody who had the gene signature that would allow you to get on the clinical trial. This is the I-SPY clinical trial. We just published the paper. If you get access to clinical trials early, there's no difference between black and white because we use the genomic biomarker to find who needs this treatment and when they needed it. The only problem is all those people who participated in that clinical trial have had a chance to survive. And the people who stayed in their community and didn't have a chance to survive died prematurely. But that started after we got Cheryl and we realized that triple negative breast cancer is not the same as all these other cancers. It's so many different types of cancer. And that's why we're going deeper to find out, okay, if it's not BRCA1, it's not BRCA2, what is it then? And that's what brings me to my new study that I'm doing with all the California universities that my friend at UCSF, Dr. Laura Esserman, started, which is we've got to get to black women early. We can't wait till we're 50 to start screening. We now just have a study now to get black women at 30 to go and ask their doctor, what's my genetic risk factor? Or just ask, what's my risk factor for breast cancer? Because I don't know why we're getting triple negative breast cancer.
What are you seeing? You've been at this in Chicago on the South Side for 40 years, as you mentioned. What have you seen over that 4-decade period? What are you seeing now when it comes to black people being willing to participate or being asked to participate in clinical trials?
Yeah, so it's a true story. So my friend was doing Athena Breast Network in California and then asked me to be on her committee supervising the study. And every time I asked them, what's going on? I was like, well, there are only 48 black people participating. I said, 48 black people in California? Did you go to Oakland? Did you go to this? And then I said, okay, well, why don't you bring it to Chicago? Because I'm going to mobilize my community, and they're going to be out there doing this for you. And guess what? Not only did we get the study in Chicago, we went to Ingalls Hospital, where my friend was born, and which is in a predominantly black community. Do you know that we have now more than 3,000 people in Chicago participating, and 25% of them self-identify as black women. It's black, it's Hispanic, and everyone. We go to churches. We're doing outreach. Every time they ask us to come to a party on the South Side, we're there because we have a recruiter that is from the community, is not afraid about the community, and we're all solving the problem together. And it's been the most important thing that I have done so far to be able to bring that genetic result to the Wisdom study. And guess what? It's now an online platform. You can join anywhere you are. We've gone to sorority houses where, we have black middle class, we have working class. Anywhere you are, if you have a smartphone or even a dumb phone, you can join wisdomstudy.org.
Wisdomstudy.org. Wisdomstudy.org. Repeat that again. Wisdomstudy.org. I love how that phrase you use. It's the best work I've done so far. And you said it so loud and so clear. It's the best work I've done so far. clearly you are motivated to do more. In all the years I've known you now, I've never asked you this question. So let me just ask right quick. Watching my clock, got about 4 minutes left here. How did you? Because one can not just hear, one can feel your passion coming through whatever device they're listening to us on right now, in whatever city in the country they're listening to us on. In Chicago, we're WVON. Hey, y'all, love VON in Chicago. But wherever people are listening right now, they can not just hear but feel your passion coming through that device. How did you get so passionate about this work?
Well, I started my career in Chicago, and I was at Cook County Hospital.
Oh yeah.
That was 40 years ago when I left Nigeria and then came to Chicago. And the important thing about Chicago is that it's a city that works. And it was cold, it was January, and I was miserable. But you know what? Everyone loved me at Cook County Hospital, where I started my career, and they all said to me, "Oh, this is this wonderful princess from Africa," and I was like, "I'm just one of you," and they loved me, and I love them back, and so across the diaspora, we're one people, we're one human race, and so that's really how I see all of this: is that we are one human race, and we should respect each other, love each other, and if one person is not well, then the whole community is sick, and that's why I'm really excited about the work we do.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. The work that you are doing. Before I lose you, the next 2.5, 3 minutes here, give me some sense of. I want to make sure I'm clear, and the audience is clear on what this wisdomstudy.org, that's the location where you can be a part of it, wisdomstudy.org. What will this study ultimately reveal? What will it help you do when it's all said and done?
Well, the idea of the wisdomstudy.org is that we want to recruit 70,000 women. And if we can go to 100,000 women, even better. And we want the women to represent America. And the idea really is, do we know when women should start screening? Some people would say start at 40. Some would say start at 50. Does every woman know their risk for breast cancer? If it's not genetics, then what is it? And that's really, if we can get 100,000 women mobilized that represent women who are going in to get their screening, and now you can join the study if you are 30 years and older. We will ask you some questions about your risk factors, your weight. I joined it. I asked all my friends to join it. I got genetic testing because I wanted to know. And they told me what my risk is. Most people, their risk is in the middle. It's moderate risk. And some, it's a little shifted to the right. And when I did my risk, was well, you put on a lot of weight since you got to America. So guess what? Why don't you exercise? Why don't you eat better? Why don't you sleep better? And so by doing that risk assessment, and they gave me a number of what my risk is, I know what to do. And then they told me, well, you don't need to do mammograms every year. You can do mammograms every 2 years, because at your age and with your risk factor, there's so many things you can do. I don't drink excessively, and I'm not obese. So even just filling out that form motivated me to change my lifestyle, because the lifestyle was I wasn't sleeping enough. I was doing all-nighters. Now I sleep, I exercise. I even did the Chicago Marathon. And that was success for me.
Yeah, that's success for anybody. If you can do the Chicago Marathon, I did a few marathons years ago and I stopped, but I can at least show you my 3 medals of the 3 that I did do. And so that's success for you and for anybody that can pull that off. I love her energy. I love her passion. I love her work. I love her witness. And frankly, I just love her. And I'm always honored to be in dialogue with her. Her name is Dr. Funmi Olopade. And that study that I wanted to bring your attention, the reason I wanted her on here, is wisdomstudy.org. They're looking for 70,000, 100,000 women all across the country, certainly African Americans, to just take this study to help them understand better the genetics, help them understand the risk factors that women face and what can be done about it. So again, it's wisdomstudy.org. Dr. Olopade, thank you again for coming on this program, and I deeply, deeply appreciate you.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to talking to you again next year.
I look forward to it next year, if not sooner. All the best to you. More when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Senator Bob Menendez claims his New Jersey home was illegally searched and is asking a New York judge to toss out most of the evidence. The veteran Democrat says federal agents ransacked his home last year out of revenge because he'd beaten a prior prosecution. Menendez is accused of accepting gifts in exchange for political favors. State Senator Cleo Fields is running for U.S. Congress in Louisiana's second black majority congressional district. The state legislature created the new district during a special session last week. The new district covers parts of East and West Baton Rouge parishes, Point Coupee Parish, and several other parishes across central Louisiana. Senator Fields serves the 14th Senate District. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers pulled away late in the fourth quarter last night to beat the Lakers by 11. A sore left ankle kept LeBron on the bench in street clothes. Kawhi Leonard had a triple-double with 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists, 23 points and 10 assists for James Harden. At 28-14, the Clippers are now 1.5 games behind Minnesota and Oklahoma City for the best record in the Western Conference. Chris Paul of the Golden State Warriors and Malcolm Brogdon of the Portland Trail Blazers are major investors in Ava DuVernay's new film, Origin. The movie premiered Friday at theaters nationwide. Top 5 women's college basketball teams in this week's rankings: South Carolina, Kansas State, Colorado, UCLA, and Iowa. On the men's side, UConn, Purdue, North Carolina, Houston, and Tennessee. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. By any other name, we demand environmental justice in 2024 and beyond. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
Got me a damn girl on my team.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe we have the best tag team in morning radio. Dominique DePrima and Tavis Smiley. As the first black woman in Los Angeles to anchor a morning drive talk radio show, Dominique covers local politics like a blanket. Weekday mornings from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. At 9 a.m., Dominique passes the baton to Tavis Smiley, who talks to everybody about everything every day until 12 noon. KBLA's dynamic duo, Dominique and Tavis. It's no wonder the LA Civil Rights Department is honoring Dominique DePrima this year at its Tell Our Story honoring black journalist leaders and storytellers event, Thursday, February 8th. Or that the John M. Langston Bar Association of Los Angeles is honoring Tavis Smiley at its 47th Annual Installation and Scholarship Awards Gala with its Community Impact Award on February 10th. We couldn't be more proud of Dominique and Tavis, who make black history every day, not just in February. If you're missing Catching Dominique and Tavis weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580. You're missing out. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
Holla, yeah.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA, a national nonprofit, offers more than 1,000 free online resources for youth and high school sports coaches, parents, students, and administrators. Visit PCADevZone.org.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like your style, though? You like your style, though?
At KBLA Talk 1580. We are unapologetic about amplifying the voices of those who have historically been left out of the conversation. As we approach our 3rd anniversary this summer, the problem with talk radio in Southern California specifically, and America more broadly, is virtually unchanged. All day, all night, all white. We make no apologies for our prime audience, but true to the best of our tradition, we're committed to expanding justice and freedom for all. So when we receive messages from listeners like Neil, we just smile.
I realize that I'm not your target demographic, but I love listening to your station as it is the only progressive station on the dial.
That's us. Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
Dexter was before his time. Even I didn't understand that. And he had a vision to build something that would bring my father to life through technology. Fast forward today, we understand that. People didn't understand it then. And so he came under vicious attack through the media, self-proclaimed scholars and others who didn't understand because they were focused on, in their mind, they felt his intent was for profit. But Dexter had a prophetic intent. He saw into the future.
That was the Reverend Dr. Bernice King speaking at the King Center in Atlanta about the passing of her brother, Dexter Scott King. Our resident physician, Dr. Robert Drummond, joins us now to talk about prostate cancer and black men in light of Dexter's untimely passing. He was only 62, the youngest son of Dr. King and Coretta Scott King. He passed away on Monday at his home here in Malibu in Southern California. Always delighted to be in dialogue with our resident physician, Dr. Robert Drummond. Doc, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
If I complained, I'd be an ingrate, although I'm not going to lie. I am saddened, as I was saying to you yesterday when you and I talked about coming on today to talk about this. Dexter was a friend of mine, and I was on the air on Monday when news broke of his passing, and it was difficult to get through that the rest of that Monday show. But we got through it, and we continue to push forward. But I'm not going to lie. It's difficult for any of us to process the death of someone we love and care about and have known for years. I recognize that each of us eventually has to do that dance with mortality. None of us gets out of here alive. But 62 is awfully young for a brother to pass away from something like prostate cancer, which ain't no joke, but it ought not to be a death sentence. Am I right about that?
I agree 100%. It should not be a death sentence, not at all.
Yeah. So tell me why it is then for so many black men, sadly.
Well, I'll tell you, I think one of the biggest things is that when you look at the statistics when it comes to prostate cancer, black men are diagnosed at 1.7 times the rate as white men, but we die at 2.1 times the rate as white men. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, and I'm very big on accountability and self-accountability for us. And I think we as Black men have to try to stay on top of our health a little bit more, because I'll tell you, when it comes to prostate cancer, it's one of those things where the mortality rate is actually not as high as you would think.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of individuals, if it's caught early enough, it can be cured. It can be cured completely.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has to go into education in terms of when we should get screened, what are the recommendations when it comes to prostate cancer screening, et cetera. Because if it is detected early enough and you know the symptoms to look out for, then it can be 100% cured.
I was just talking to another doctor, Dr. Olapati out of Chicago, who is the foremost expert, certainly in Black America, in America, period, I think, on triple-negative breast cancer. That's her thing. She's, again, based on the south side of Chicago. So this entire hour, as I mentioned earlier, has been about health. Dr. Olapati at the top, Dr. Robert Drummond at the bottom, talking now about prostate cancer. And we were just talking to, again, Dr. Olapati about screenings. And over the years, and I'm not a woman, but over the years I've discussed this subject enough to know that there's been all sorts of, variations on when women should get checked for breast cancer. I mean, start getting their mammograms, when, how often. That there's been a range of answers that I've just heard in the 30 years I've been in broadcast talking about these kind of issues, certainly every October, which leads me to ask, what do we know then? What are we telling Black men in particular about when and how often they ought to be screened for prostate cancer? What's the order of the day in 2024?
Well, first, I'll say you're spot on in regards to the changing recommendations, and it can be very difficult for the public to keep up with those things.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's probably difficult for physicians to keep up with it. Those recommendations come from an organization or a group of physicians that lead something called the United States Preventive Services Task Force. And they look at historical trends, screening, recommendations in the past, how that has helped to either prevent the disease or treat it at an early stage. And so they make recommendations based on that. And so the current recommendations for just men in general is to start at the age of 55, between 55 and 69, have a conversation with your healthcare professional about PSA screening. That's a prostate-specific antigen.
Mm-hmm.
That's the recommendation. It's actually not to get a prostate exam at that time, but it's just to start that conversation. Specifically, when it comes to Black men, the recommendation is if you have a family member who was diagnosed with prostate cancer earlier than the age of 65, then you start that conversation at the age of 45 in regards to getting screened for prostate cancer. So that's the current recommendations out right now.
Yep. See, that's what I mean by those numbers shifting. I am above 55 at this point in my life, thank God for Jesus. But a dozen, 10 or 12 years ago, before I turned 50, the recommendation then was to start at 50. Now you're telling me 55. So for me, it was 50, and so I did in fact start at 50. But again, it is difficult when these recommendations sort of change. Is there any? I'm going to go back to that number you shared with us earlier. That Black men are diagnosed with prostate cancer 1.7 times more than other folk, but we die at the rate of 2.1 times them. 1.7 diagnosed, 2.1 it's fatal for us. So that obviously is disturbing on a number of levels. Beyond early diagnosis, is there anything else? I'm talking now genetically. I'm talking now. We just talked about the human genome moments ago. Beyond early diagnosis, is there anything else that you know of that can be that this disparity between 1.7 diagnosis, 2.1 fatality, anything beyond early diagnosis that you think contributes to that differential?
Well, you hit the nail on the head in terms of the first thing that contributes, and that's the time at which it's diagnosed. And there's a lot that goes into that. What I also say is that there's a couple of other things that come into play, and it's kind of difficult to figure out what percentages those play in regards to that, 1.7 to 2.1.
Hold that thought 1 second. I'm sorry, I'm watching my clock. I want to hear what those other two things are. So the obvious one, Dr. Robert Drummond and I agree on, is early diagnosis. My question is, which you'll answer when we come forward, is what else justifies, explains, rationalizes that differential between a 1.7 diagnosis and a 2.1 death rate for Black men when it comes to prostate cancer? Don't you move. More of Dr. Robert Drummond when we come forward.
From Lamert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Did you know there's dust floating around your home?
Really?
Yeah. Dust starts on hard surfaces like shelves and ceiling fans. And when you walk by, dust starts to move, compromising the quality of the air you and your family breathe.
So, what do I do?
Get Swiffer Heavy Duty Duster. Swiffer Heavy Duty Duster is the fast and easy way to trap and lock dust.
Before it gets into the air.
Exactly. So you can just... Swiffer Heavy Duty Duster, proud partner of the American Lung Association.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles is a nonprofit law firm that protects and advances the rights of the most underserved, leveling the playing field and ensuring that everyone can have access to the justice system. Every year, LAFLA provides free, high-quality legal services to more than 100,000 people living in poverty across greater Los Angeles. Their unique combination of neighborhood offices, self-help centers at courthouses, and domestic violence clinics puts Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles on the front lines in vulnerable communities and at the forefront of change. LAFLA's expert team of attorneys, paralegals, and support staff works to provide direct representation, offer counsel and advice, provide referrals, and educate the community about their legal rights through workshops and seminars. With locations all over LA, you can access their services or volunteer to help no matter where you live. And if you have an urgent issue, call 213-235-0060. That's 213-235-0060. To get legal help, make a donation, or volunteer, visit LAFLA.org. LAFLA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and our resident physician, Dr. Robert Drummond, who's about to explain to us now what else makes up for that differential between the 1.7 number of black men who are diagnosed and that 2.1 number that represents fatalities in Black America. What else explains that difference, Dr. Drummond?
Well, first, before I say what explains the difference, I'll tell you where that thought process comes from in regards to the possibility of there being a genetic basis. And so there was a huge study called a SEER study, Surveillance, Epidemiology, and End Results. And that study, the results of that study were used to kind of float the idea that perhaps there was a genetic basis for the worst outcomes. There was a larger study, repeat study that was done at the University of Michigan that kind of refuted that and added a little more clarity. And so their thought process was that we know about the fact that we're diagnosed at a later stage, so that's the part that we talked about. But also the other confounders are the fact of Black men are less likely to have health insurance and have access to the high-quality care. So is your particular provider going to recommend a full prostate resection? Are they going to recommend radiation therapy, et cetera? And then the last part that's very difficult to account for is the relationship that the provider has with their healthcare professional. Do they listen to the recommendations, and are they lost to follow-up more, which we find that they are? And do they believe those recommendations that are coming from their healthcare providers? So those are some of the small little things that are at play that they believe are why we have worse outcomes, worse mortality.
Right. Here's a broad question, but you're the right person to ask this of. And I'm not asking your medical advice. I'm just asking your view of this. When many in our community find themselves battling a particular health crisis, there are a couple of options. The first option, in no particular order, is what we would call Western medicine, of which you are a practitioner. Western medicine. And then there are all kinds of alternative routes, alternative options, alternative medicines and therapies that people have access to. If I've endured this conversation once, I've endured it more times than I can count with friends of mine who've gone through certain situations. And the question always is Western medicine or an alternative option. Broadly speaking, when you engage in those kinds of conversations, again, I know it's issue specific, it's person specific, but just talk to me in whatever way you can about how people navigate that conundrum, if you will, that frame, if you will, when they're faced with a health crisis, Western medicine versus alternative medicine, and how they go about coming to a conclusion, if any of that makes sense to you.
It does make sense. It's a good point. And I have a lot of patients who prefer no medications. What I say is that I think that there is 100% room for naturopathic medicine. Medicine is not based on pharmaceuticals to assist in many diseases. Okay? That's the strength. A lot of the medications that are sold by pharmacies are based on natural medicines. So we have to start with the understanding of that, right? So, yeah, there's definitely some benefit. But I would say that that's disease specific. When it comes to cancer, in no way, shape, form, or fashion should any person choose naturopathic medicine and alternative medicine towards the proven, I would say, proven by studies, by actual clinical trials, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and surgery, the way that we treat something like cancer. Cancer is one of those things. It's not going to respond to vitamins. It's not going to respond to alkaline water. No offense to the Sebeites and those that follow Dr. Sebi out there. That's not going to get it when it comes to cancer. And that's just a very frank conversation that I have to have with patients. And I do know patients that chose that route over traditional Western medicine when they were diagnosed with cancer. And they had a very aggressive course, and they died very quickly. And that's just the absolute fact of it. You
came as I thought you would, correct, straight, no chaser, with a transparent answer. And you were getting the best advice that he offers his patients when he is met with that question, Western medicine versus alternative medicine. I love and respect the straightforward nature of his response. Our remaining moments when we come forward with our resident physician, Dr. Robert Drummond.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA Can also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007 they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA Can believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right.
Y'all gotta try that Febreze car.
Just right, just right, just right. La 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 la. With up to 40 days of consistency on low Febreze car clips right on your vent. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face when it smells just right, just right, just right. Breathe happy Febreze. La 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 la.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
I can humbly and honestly say that it's part of my mission. We discuss anything and everything that matters to black people. I'm rooting for everybody black. And at our best, we want to do work that challenges our audience to re-examine the assumptions they hold, expand their inventory of ideas, make better choices, and live better lives. That's what we're all about. So I am happily able to say that we don't just talk about these maladies when someone famous falls victim to them. And yet, I'm not mad at anybody who does that. I believe these moments ought to be instructive and informative and empowering for the broader audience. I say that to ask Dr. Drummond why it shouldn't take the passing of Dexter Scott King from prostate cancer at 62 to usher the rest of the country into a conversation about prostate cancer, which, again, I'm grateful to have you as a resident physician. We're discussing stuff all the time. It shouldn't take the passing of a person who's well known to usher us into a dialogue about this. But over the years of practice, I'm wondering, just curious here, whether or not when these moments happen, whether or not in your practice or in your friends' practices, you do in fact notice any sort of uptick in response.
Absolutely. I noticed an uptick in response whenever there's, I would say, national attention brought to something like this, which is what happens when a celebrity passes from one of these illnesses or diseases. And I can't say that that's a bad thing. I like the fact that, that attention gets shined at that time. Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned, we've got to do better at shining that attention all the time. It's like I said during COVID. I don't want people to just think that science is important when there's a worldwide pandemic. I want them to understand that it's always important, and that's how we get prepared for it. And so for everyday individuals, I try to preach to them to make sure that they just stay healthy. It's not about getting healthy when you get sick. It's about being healthy before you get sick. And part of that health has to do with health maintenance and health awareness, knowing what your screening should be, following up with your doctor, and then taking those recommendations. And when you do that, you can detect things earlier and you can have better outcomes. Yeah. So the biggest part is really just constant education. That's one of the things that I love about your show, and that's why I love coming here. And anytime that I'm busy, I will stop what I'm doing to make sure that I can make it, because these health topics are absolutely vital and so important.
And for that,
not just when it's a celebrity passes.
No, agreed. Yeah. And for that, and for that, we are grateful. That is to say, you're taking time to talk to us. We are grateful for that. Perennially. As we say at my boxing gym, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. And that's the advice Dr. Drummond is offering now, to stay healthy, so you ain't got to get healthy when you find yourself in harm's way. I got 30 seconds, so let me ask you right quick, your final thoughts in 30 seconds. What do you say to black men who too often end up dying from stuff they shouldn't die from because they're scared to go to the doctor in the first place?
Well, I tell you, all the studies show that black men do better when they have a health provider that looks like them. So if at all possible, I do encourage black men to try to find an African-American doctor, and there are a lot of them that are out there to help them with their daily health journey.
Our resident physician, Dr. Robert Drummond. I thank you, sir. We'll talk again soon. All the best to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's our show for today. Thanks for tuning in. Until tomorrow, and as always, keep the faith.